Moon entered Aries last night, and you can feel it in the air. I woke up this morning, and my attitude recently shifts quite a bit dramatically from during those times when the moon shifts from Pisces to Aries. Perhaps because Pisces time for me is always kind of contemplative. It's the time of the month when I tend to procrastinate the most. I don't feel like doing things. I have trouble being motivated to do things. Pisces is the 12th energy in the tropical zodiac, and so it's so much about being introspective, time for pulling out of the daily drama and reconnecting with the true source, with our spiritual source, before we hit the ground again in Aries. And I am feeling that shift quite strongly in recent times. I can't tell if this is because I have been tracking this moon cycles for several years already, or because there is something specific. Times when the moon enters the cardinal signs are always felt strongly because my ascendant, my rising sign, is actually a cardinal sign. Cardinal signs start with Aries because Aries is the first, number one, the beginning during the spring equinox, and exactly the opposite in the sky. Think about the whole circle around us as the sun follows that yearly circle in the sky. Exactly in the opposite direction is Libra. And so Libra is the other cardinal sign, and 90 degrees, offset 90 degrees from this Aries-Libra axis are Cancer for the solstice, when the sun enters the solstice in the northern hemisphere, and December when the sun enters Capricorn. So you have Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. They're called cardinal because they sit on that cross, planetary cross, equinox, solstice, equinox, solstice, and set up the tone for the following quarter of the year. They kind of resonate with that. Let's get started, let's do things. And my own rising sign is Libra. But not only that, because technically the point which was rising when I was born is towards the end of Libra. In fact, it's more like 27 degrees. But there's something else as well. Pluto and Uranus were in Libra at the time when I was born. And that's for an entire generation. Anybody who was born between somewhere 1971 and 1975, you probably have that. You might not have the ascendant because the ascendant is so sensitive to the time you were born in terms of hour of the day, location. But the two other planets were there for all of us. This is us. If you want to think of Generation X and defining astrological influences, those two will be one of the major influences for our generation. For me particularly, first of all, Pluto sits very early, so it's like fourth Libra, and I kind of feel it. So since I started tracking the moon, I have been particularly sensitive in those moments when the moon passes through the 4 degrees of each of those cardinal signs. So it's not just Libra, but the opposite Aries, for Aries, or for Cancer, or for Capricorn. There's something about purging on the physical level. So I have decided to run an experiment, which is already has been going for over a year. So I thought, well, if those are the times when my body naturally likes to cleanse or purge, why not fasting day? I'm at an age where fasting actually is good if you do it like here and there for no longer than a day. Otherwise it'll require medical supervision, I would imagine. But skipping a meal here and there on moon entering those cardinal signs and connecting with my natal Pluto has been actually quite beneficial. my body feels lighter. I feel lighter. And in the past, I mean, this is how I discovered it. In the past, I noticed that those days, I felt my body much more inert and heavy when I ate. You know, you just go. This is not the time to go out with friends to a restaurant and, you know, or all you can eat buffet. There were unpleasant times in the past when I became violently sick, almost like food poisoning, even though I knew the food was not poisoned, it was not spoiled. The most spectacular case was a restaurant I went with my husband many, many years ago, and we had been to that restaurant so many times, and I was always ordering the same dish over and over and over. But there it is. One day I just ordered it, and my body just became sick. So fast forward several decades, actually, the current experiment, and my working hypothesis, if you wish, is that I need to be extra careful because my natural inclinations today, physically, on the physical level, are actually for cleansing, for lighter food, for more water, for skipping one meal or two meals, to give my body an opportunity to detox, which is kind of cheap if you think about it, inexpensive. I don't have to go through some expensive routines to let my body to just simply take some time for detoxing, which reminds me of a very fundamental spiritual fact that a lot of times you don't achieve healing by going and doing extra things. So healing is not an additive process. If anything, it's a process of removal. A lot of times, if you wish to achieve healing, you just have to remove toxins, remove an attitude, and remove yourself from the whole process. You know, if you can just step back mentally and let your body handle it. So this is what I mean by removal, process of removal. But circling back to the moon in Aries. So obviously I'm skipping a meal today. This is my fasting day. But I also feel more put together. And that sense usually comes a little bit later, towards the end of the energy, when the moon connects with my ascendant. Because think about it, the ascendant is the point that was just rising on the eastern horizon when you were born. And so in a sense, it's kind of linked with your own presence or appearance on this planet. And it carries those characteristics. There's something there in the energy that ascendant is an indicative of what energies really said, okay, let's get going. And you can feel today, I feel that way, even though it's going to come out later, because the moon in Aries always starts with connecting with Pluto. But I've been working for quite a bit with Pluto, so in the past it felt like disorienting. Now I'm a little bit more clear what is happening, so it's helping me stay focused, stay grounded. A little bit later in the day, moon will actually hit, when it passes through 12 Aries, it will connect through a square with my natal Saturn. And again, only 10 years ago I would have felt a little bit more resistant, or doubtful. If I were in the middle of a project, I'll be plagued with doubts. Or what am I doing? Am I doing it right? I'll be a little bit reluctant to commit to new experiences. But you see, the gift of Saturn is, if you acknowledge the cycle and if you show up at the life's lessons and you do your work without trying to avoid, resist, cut corners, it turns out into a hard-won confidence. And here I am, the testimony. So here it is, I'm proving it to you, that the feeling, but this is coming on the heels of 10 years at least of work, and work not like physical, you're sweating, but more about being conscious about this process. What is the Saturn cycle doing for you? Why are you so resistant to this new thing? Or why do you now doubt yourself? Why do you Why are you hypercritical? Why do you feel this insecurities? All the negative narratives. In fact, I call Saturn our inner critic. Whatever your mom said or your dad said or your classmates from elementary school said, all those things tend to come during the moon in Saturn days. But, if you stay with them, and you just keep processing and processing and processing. And there were times when it was so tough that I would just get up in the morning, see that the moon is in that part of the sky, and say, okay, this too shall pass. And I just move through the day very carefully, cautiously, one step at a time, just biding my time for the next day. And the next day always came. For me, that usually ends up with the end of the cardinal signs, because the end of my Libra is really ascendant. And not only the ascendant, but also Uranus was very close to ascendant. So to me, those two are always indistinguishable. How much I want to be that rebellious spirit bringing new ideas to the world, and how much I want to be the Libra ascendant. I used to joke that if you catch me on a good day, I'll be the pleasing person to get along with everybody. And if you catch me on a bad day, when I have chosen to embody the Uranus energy more, I will be this contrarian and contradictory person that doesn't fit with anything and anyone around. As I have aged, the two extremes have kind of managed to find some common ground and to blend into one interesting bundle of, I can get along, but at the same time I can preserve my uniqueness and my original opinion. But I have also learned how to express it in a way without provoking or insulting others. That's the Libra again. Without conforming, and there's the Uranus. So anyway, but today it's not Moon in Libra day. Today is a Moon in Aries, which is exactly on the opposite end. And Aries energies are usually about standing your ground. Yesterday, the Moon was in Pisces. The tone of the day was spacey, spiritual, boundless. Pisces has no sense of boundaries, and that's why the message yesterday was, don't be the martyr. Don't go and help if you haven't been asked to help, because Pisces doesn't have that ability to sense how to protect others. Whenever it tries to protect others, it does it out of this empathy and compassion, which is really good, but without the boundaries. A lot of times the downside of Pisces is you end up helping when you are not asked to, and people naturally don't appreciate it, and then Pisces becomes the martyr and goes in the corner and sulks for the rest of the month, feeling unappreciated with passive aggressive behavior. But today is the day to help, stand, put your voice there. Again, true aligned Aries does not fight, does not hurl insults. True aligned, not Pisces, Aries. True aligned Aries knows how to say no, knows how to say yes, knows which person needs to be protected, and sets up to protect those people. And again, it's not about starting wars, although there's so many wars nowadays, but simply standing your ground. It's a great energy. And if you feel conflicted or confused, or if you're not sure, if you doubt a little bit yourself, because there could be other influences. For instance, like me, when the moon hits that 12 Aries, it will be squaring my natal Saturn, and I'll be like, am I doing it right? Because I still doubt a little bit, even though I have had this sense of being there, done that so many times. I know you, Saturn. I know how you operate, and I have built that resilience. Saturn will build up resilience with you. But in case you wonder how much to fight and how much not to fight, let me give you an insight, which links to my lesson for today. I like to pull lessons at random every day from A Course in Miracles. And the lesson for today is actually lesson number 34 for me, that says, I can see peace instead of this. I love this lesson because it reminds me that peace starts with me inside. You don't go out and fight with the Aries energy if you're lacking peace inside your mind. We all want to see peace on the planet. There are several conflicts, ugly, very ugly conflicts. I'm not going to mention them. We all are watching them unfolding. And for those of us with very strong empathetic and compassionate streaks, we're feeling that misery, the suffering, and we want to do something. And I want to bring your attention to the fact that you cannot bring peace outside if your mind is at war. And that is where the lesson 34 comes in to help, because before you go and do something, and maybe you are in position today to do something for the planet, to take a stand, to go and take a stand for peace or make a difference, but make sure to take that pause, a few moments in your head, deep, honestly inspect your heart and your head, and set your intention. I want to see peace instead of this. And then listen for a few moments. If you wish, you can go and read the lesson. The lessons are actually available on the internet freely from the Foundation for Inner Peace, who are in charge of keeping the A Course in Miracles book. They're available to everybody, so you can do the lesson if you wish with all the instructions. But if you don't, at least one little thing that you can do today is simply give yourself that space, remind yourself that you can see peace instead of this, and see what comes. Do it. Give yourself the 5 seconds, the 5 minutes. If you have 10 minutes, do it and listen. And your higher self will give you interesting solutions. Original, funny, outrageous sometimes in their own simplicity, and always effective.